You ever notice how the smallest things, something as ridiculous as a parking spot, can spark off something so much bigger? I never thought I'd be the one telling this story, but if you've got the patience, listen closely. Because what started as a stupid fight over painted white lines on the asphalt turned into a mess that none of us could have predicted. And it all began with two women who couldn't stand the sight of each other. Caroline Wright had only been living in the Orange Blossom condominiums for 2 weeks. She wasn't used to the neighbors yet. She wasn't used to the odd rules pasted on the bulletin board in the laundry room, or the way some of the longtime residents acted like they ran the entire complex. But she figured people would eventually warm up to her. She wasn't looking for trouble. She just wanted a place of her own, quiet evenings, and peace. That was it. But she didn't know about Margaret Dawson. Margaret had lived there for over 20 years. 20 years of claiming invisible territory. 20 years of memorizing the handbook and twisting its words to suit her moods. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was the self-appointed warden of the parking lot. The sun was sinking when Caroline drove in that evening. The air was heavy, buzzing with summer heat, and all she wanted was to get inside, kick off her shoes, and drink something cold. She found a spot close to her building, between two white lines, and eased her car into place. She didn't notice Margaret at first. Didn't see her glaring from her balcony, thin lips pressed tight like she'd just swallowed something sour. Caroline gathered her groceries, locked the car, and started toward the stairs when the voice called out. "Excuse me," Margaret snapped, her voice cutting through the still air. "That spot is for residents only." Caroline turned, confused. "I am a resident," she said, keeping her tone polite. She thought maybe the woman just didn't recognize her yet. But Margaret wasn't having it. She strode down from her porch, her sandals slapping against the pavement, her eyes narrow. "Then why are you parked like that? Heads in only. Didn't you read the rules?" Caroline glanced back at her car. She had backed in, out of habit. "Oh, my mistake. I'll fix it," she said, already moving to put her bags down so she could get back in the car. "Good," Margaret replied with a tight smile. "And while you're at it, maybe you should move to the end of the lot. This spot is taken." Caroline frowned. "Taken? By who?" "By me. For someone who's visiting later. You'll understand." Margaret gave a knowing look, smug, like she was daring Caroline to challenge her. Caroline stared. "Isn't that what guest parking is for?" Margaret stiffened. "Don't get smart with me. You're new here, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But this spot's reserved." "Reserved?" Caroline repeated, incredulous. "You don't get to reserve spots. That's not how it works. Look, I'm not moving my car to the end of the lot so some guy can park here. I live here. This is a resident spot. I'm staying." That should have been the end of it. But Margaret wasn't the kind of person who let things go. She planted herself right in front of Caroline's bumper, arms folded, her chin high. "Then you'll have to move through me." Caroline sighed, got into her car, and started the engine. She rolled down the window. "Look, I'll pull forward, straighten up, head in, whatever. But you need to move." Margaret shook her head, stone-faced. "No. Not happening." Caroline inched the car forward, barely pressing the gas, trying to nudge Margaret into stepping aside. But Margaret saw her chance. She threw her arms up, staggered sideways, and screamed. "Oh no! Oh no! She hit me! She ran me over!" Caroline slammed the car into park. "What are you talking about? I didn't touch you." Margaret dropped to one knee, clutching her hip. "Help! Somebody help! She's trying to kill me!" From the windows above, blinds twitched. Neighbors peeked out. A couple paused on the sidewalk. Caroline's stomach sank. This was spiraling out of control. She got out, held up her hands. "My car isn't anywhere near you." "You're lying." Margaret's face contorted, but her voice was steady, like she'd rehearsed it. "You'll regret this," she hissed, pulling a cell phone from her pocket. "You're in for it now." She dialed with shaky fingers, but her eyes burned with triumph. "Hello, yes, police? I've been hit by a car. I'm at Orange Blossom condominiums. Yes, I'm hurt. Please hurry. Yes, I'm in danger. Then she hung up, smirking at Caroline like she'd just won something. Enjoy explaining this to the cops. Caroline felt heat rush to her face. You're insane, she muttered. But there was nothing she could do. Margaret had already spun her story. Minutes later, the squad car rolled in. Officer Daniel Lopez stepped out, notebook in hand. He was broad-shouldered, calm-eyed, the kind of man who had heard every excuse 100 times. "Afternoon, ladies," he said evenly. "We got a call about a hit and run." Caroline almost laughed. "Nobody got hit, officer. And I definitely didn't run." Margaret clutched her side dramatically, limping in a circle. "She hit me with her car. Look at me, I can barely stand." Lopez raised a brow. "All right. One at a time. Ma'am, you made the call." He looked at Margaret. "Yes." "She's dangerous. She attacked me with her vehicle." Margaret's voice wavered just enough to sound convincing. "That's not true." Caroline burst out. "I didn't touch her. She's pretending. She's been blocking my car because she wants the space for some guy. She's been faking this whole thing." Lopez sighed, pen poised. "Your word against hers, then. Unless there's proof." Caroline's eyes lit up. "There is proof. She was on the phone with someone, bragging about faking it. I heard her. I recorded part of it." She pulled out her phone, opened the audio file, and pressed play. Margaret's voice echoed, "Anyway, so I called the cops. They're coming here very, very shortly. And I told them that she hit me with her car. This woman has no idea what she's dealing with. I got to get into character to be an injured old lady." "Gotcha." Lopez listened, face unreadable. Margaret froze, color draining from her cheeks. "That's taken out of context," she tried weakly. Caroline shook her head. "No context can change what you just heard." For the first time, Margaret's bravado cracked. "Fine," she muttered. "I won't press charges. She can keep her stupid car there. Let's just forget it." Lopez straightened, snapping his notebook shut. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. Filing a false police report is a crime. You accused her of something serious." Margaret's eyes went wide. "Wait, no. I didn't mean—" "You have the right to remain silent," Lopez began, his voice steady, his hands already reaching for his cuffs. Caroline stepped back, stunned, as Margaret thrashed. "No. You can't arrest me. I have dinner tonight, do you hear me? Pot roast and dessert. Gerald's coming over." Lopez clicked the cuffs around her wrists. "You can explain that to the judge." Margaret shouted over her shoulder as he guided her to the cruiser. "This isn't over. You'll regret this. Both of you." Caroline exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. Neighbors were whispering, retreating back inside, pretending they hadn't been watching. The lot fell quiet except for the hum of the police radio. Lopez offered Caroline a small nod. "Sorry for the trouble, ma'am. You have a good evening." She managed a faint smile. "Thanks, officer." The cruiser door slammed. Margaret's voice still carried, muffled but venomous. "You're gonna pay for this. You'll all pay." Caroline watched the car roll away, her hands trembling despite herself. She told herself it was over. That Margaret would spend the night in a cell, maybe longer, and that would be the end of it. But deep down, she knew better. Because people like Margaret didn't just give up. They stewed. They plotted. And they came back meaner than before. And Caroline was about to find out just how far Margaret Dawson was willing to go. Caroline thought the night would finally be quiet once the police cruiser disappeared around the corner, carrying Margaret Dawson away. She picked up her groceries, walked back inside, and tried to shake off the whole ordeal. It was just a parking dispute, she told herself. Nothing more. Margaret had embarrassed herself, got arrested, and the police had seen right through her lies. That should have been the end. But people like Margaret didn't just vanish. They lingered, even when they weren't there. Caroline lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan turning above her. The complex was unusually silent, no voices carrying through thin walls, no dogs barking, no faint television noise leaking from her neighbors. Just silence. Yet she couldn't relax. Margaret's last words replayed in her mind. "You'll regret this. You'll all pay." The next morning, Caroline was up early. She made herself coffee, pulled her curtains open, and froze. Right there in the parking lot, just a few spaces down, was Margaret's silver sedan. The same one the cops had seen parked the day before. Caroline stepped back. That wasn't possible. Margaret had been arrested. How could her car already be back? She pulled out her phone, checking for any news updates. Nothing. She scrolled, searched, waited. Still nothing. Eventually, she convinced herself maybe the car had been towed back, or maybe someone else had access to it. She tried to let it go. But later that afternoon, when she went to get her mail, she heard it, the voice. Raspy, familiar, and mocking. "Well, look who it is." Caroline turned, and her heart stopped. Margaret was there, standing by the stairwell as if nothing had happened. Her wrists were bare, no cuffs, no bruises. Her smirk stretched wide, and her eyes glittered with something between amusement and malice. How are you here?" Caroline asked, her voice thin. Margaret shrugged, her expression smug. Charges dropped. "Misunderstanding," they said. "Lucky me." Caroline's jaw tightened. "You filed a false report. You lied." "And you," Margaret said sharply, pointing at her, "are a nuisance. You think you can waltz into this place, take over spots, disrespect rules, and make a fool out of me in front of my neighbors? No. That doesn't fly with me. Not here." Caroline folded her arms. "Then maybe it's time you learned not everyone's afraid of you." Margaret leaned in close, her perfume sickly sweet, her breath hot. "I don't need fear. I need patience. And patience, my dear, runs deeper than you can imagine." Caroline walked away, heart pounding. But Margaret wasn't done. That night, strange things began. Caroline came home from work and found her welcome mat flipped upside down. The next day, her car windshield was smeared with something sticky. Soda, maybe. The day after, she found a note tucked under her wiper blade. "Enjoy your spot while you can." She reported it to management. They listened, nodded, promised to look into it. But Caroline could tell their sympathy was hollow. Margaret had lived there 20 years. Margaret donated to the annual fundraisers. Margaret baked cookies for the holiday party. Caroline was new, an outsider. Management wasn't going to pick sides. By the fourth day, Caroline started double-locking her doors. She kept her curtains drawn. She glanced over her shoulder walking from the parking lot to her unit. But Margaret wasn't just taunting her anymore. She was escalating. It began with the scratching sounds. Caroline would wake in the middle of the night to faint noises outside her window. A dragging sound. A scrape. Sometimes a low whistle, tuneless and long. When she looked, she saw nothing. No figure. Just the outline of trees swaying under the security lights. Then came the phone calls. Private number. Caroline picked up once. "Hello," she whispered. A pause. Breathing on the other end. And then soft, mocking words. "Head in only." The line went dead. Caroline gripped the phone so hard she nearly cracked the case. On the 7th day after the arrest, Caroline reached her breaking point. She was carrying her laundry basket down the hall when she felt it, eyes on her. She turned sharply and saw Margaret at the end of the corridor, standing perfectly still, smiling. Not moving. Just watching. Caroline's chest tightened. "What do you want from me?" she called. Margaret tilted her head, still smiling. "Nothing. Just waiting." "For what?" "You'll see." The words crawled down Caroline's spine. She turned and rushed into the laundry room, slamming the door behind her. Her hands shook as she loaded the machine. She could hear faint footsteps in the hallway outside, pacing back and forth. When she finally stepped out, the hall was empty. That night, Caroline decided she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She drove to the station herself, asked for Officer Lopez, and explained everything. The car, the notes, the phone calls, the stalking. He listened patiently, but there was only so much he could do without hard evidence. "Do you have the notes?" "The recordings?" he asked. Caroline handed over what she had. The officer frowned. This isn't enough to press charges. But I'll file a report. If she crosses the line, we'll act. Crosses the line. Caroline wondered how much closer Margaret could get before someone finally admitted she was dangerous. Days bled together. The harassment never stopped. Caroline lost sleep. She jumped at shadows. She started skipping work just to avoid leaving her apartment. The only time she felt slightly safe was inside, behind her bolted locks. Until the night, the locks didn't matter. It was a stormy evening, thunder rattling the windows, rain pouring down in sheets. Caroline sat curled on her couch, trying to drown out her thoughts with television. Lightning flashed, illuminating her apartment in stark white. And then she heard it. A creak. From the hallway. Inside. Her blood ran cold. Slowly, she turned toward the door. The locks were in place. She could see them from the couch. Another creak. This time, from the kitchen. Caroline stood, her breath shallow, every muscle tense. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a heavy lamp, and clutched it in her hands. "Who's there?" she whispered. Silence. Then, from the darkness of the kitchen, a voice. Soft. Familiar. "You should have moved your car." Lightning split the sky again, flooding the room with light. And there, standing in her kitchen doorway, drenched from the rain, was Margaret Dawson. Caroline's grip on the lamp tightened. Her mind raced. The locks were still bolted. The door hadn't opened. How had Margaret gotten in? Margaret stepped forward, smiling that same twisted smile. "You made a fool of me. In front of everyone. Do you know how that feels after 20 years of respect? 20 years of order. And you ruined it. Over a parking spot." Caroline backed away, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Get out of my house." Margaret tilted her head, her hair dripping onto the floor. "Oh, I will. But not until you understand what it means to lose. Because this isn't about cars anymore, Caroline. This is about teaching you a lesson." The lamp shook in Caroline's hands. She forced her voice steady. "If you come any closer, I'll—" "Do what?" Margaret whispered, stepping closer. "Call the cops again. Who do you think they'll believe this time?" Caroline raised the lamp higher, her arms trembling. But before she could speak, another sound cut through the air. A knock. At the door. Both women froze. "Caroline," a man's voice called. "It's Officer Lopez. We need to talk." Margaret's smile vanished, replaced by fury. Her eyes blazed. "This isn't over," she hissed. And with a sudden motion, she slipped past Caroline, darted toward the back door, and vanished into the storm. Caroline dropped the lamp, knees weak, as Lopez's knock came again. "Caroline, are you there?" She rushed to the door, unbolted it, and nearly collapsed into his arms. He caught her, concern flashing in his eyes. "What happened?" he asked. "She was here," Caroline stammered. "She was inside. She was right here." Lopez scanned the apartment, hand on his holster. But Margaret was gone. Only rainwater trailed across the floor where she had stood. Caroline's voice shook. "She said this isn't about parking anymore. She said she's going to teach me a lesson." Lopez's face hardened. "Then we'll stop her before she gets the chance." But Caroline wasn't sure anyone could. Because Margaret wasn't just angry anymore. She was unhinged. And she was just getting started. Caroline barely slept after that night. Every time her eyes closed, she saw Margaret's face in the lightning, soaked hair, manic smile, that whisper, "This isn't about cars anymore." Even with Officer Lopez promising extra patrols, even with the locks checked and double-checked, Caroline couldn't shake the sense that Margaret was still inside the wall somehow, watching. The storm passed, but the tension stayed. The next few days, Caroline tried to go back to her routine. She went to work, though she caught herself staring at the office windows, certain Margaret was lurking in the parking lot below. She checked her phone constantly, half expecting another private call with nothing but breathing on the other end. And then, just when she thought maybe things were settling, she found the new note. It was slipped under her door in the middle of the night. Bold letters scrawled across yellow paper. Lesson 1. You can't sleep if I don't want you to. Caroline dropped the note like it burned her fingers. She called the station again, demanded to speak with Lopez, but he was out on another call. The officer on duty promised to pass along the message. That night, the noises returned. Knocks at her wall. Whistles in the courtyard. Faint scratching against her window. Caroline pressed her hands over her ears, rocking in the dark, whispering to herself that it wasn't real. But she knew it was. Margaret was there, somewhere, somehow always one step ahead. By the third night, Caroline couldn't take it anymore. She packed a bag, planning to spend a few nights at a motel, just to breathe. But when she stepped outside with her suitcase, Margaret was already waiting. She stood under the lamplight by her silver sedan, dressed neatly in a floral blouse like she was heading to brunch, not stalking her neighbor. Her smile spread wide when she saw Caroline. "Running away already?" she asked sweetly. Caroline froze. "You need help, Margaret." "No," Margaret replied, stepping closer. "You do. You need to understand boundaries. You need to learn respect." Caroline gripped the handle of her suitcase until her knuckles whitened. "Leave me alone." Margaret tilted her head. "I tried that. But every time I close my eyes, I see you laughing at me with the cops. You humiliated me. And humiliation," her voice dropped low, "is a debt that must be paid." Caroline's pulse raced. "If you come near me again, I swear I'll—" Margaret leaned in, voice sharp as glass. "You'll what? Hit me with your car this time? Go ahead. Make me the victim again. They'll believe me. They always believe me." The words hit Caroline like a punch. Margaret had already twisted the truth once. She could do it again. Caroline backed toward her apartment, abandoning the suitcase. "Stay away from me," she whispered. Then louder, "Stay away from me." Margaret just smiled. Lesson 2 is coming. And with that, she slipped back into the shadows, leaving Caroline trembling on the pavement. The following evening, Caroline tried to keep every light on in the apartment. She cooked dinner, left the television blaring, anything to keep the silence away. But around midnight, the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the unit whole. Caroline's breath caught. She reached for her phone, fumbling to turn on the flashlight. That's when she saw it. Her window was open. She never left it open. A whisper floated from the kitchen. "Lesson 2. Caroline's heart nearly stopped. She grabbed a knife from the counter, her hand shaking so badly the blade scraped against the tiles. "Get out!" she screamed into the dark. A laugh answered her. Not loud, not booming, just soft and cruel. "Not yet." She stumbled toward the door, but before she could reach it, she felt movement behind her. A hand grazed her shoulder. She spun wildly, slashing with the knife, but hit nothing. Her phone flashlight caught something in the corner, Margaret's reflection in the glass of the patio door, her eyes glowing pale in the beam. Caroline bolted for the bedroom, slammed the door, locked it. Her breathing was ragged. She called 911 with trembling hands. 911, what's your emergency? She's in my apartment, Caroline whispered. She's here right now. Margaret Dawson. Please, you have to send someone. The dispatcher's voice stayed calm. Stay on the line. Officers are on the way. Can you secure yourself? Caroline pressed her back against the door, knife clutched to her chest. She could hear Margaret's footsteps outside the room, slow and deliberate, circling. You can't hide forever, Margaret sang softly. Caroline's eyes welled with tears. She had never felt so powerless. Then, banging on the front door. Police! Open up! Margaret's voice stopped. The footsteps faded. Caroline flung the bedroom door open, rushed to the living room. 2 officers were forcing their way in. Officer Lopez was among them. Caroline, are you okay? He demanded. She's here. She was just here. Caroline cried, pointing toward the patio. The officers spread out, searching. Lopez checked the back door. Rain blew in through the open window, soaking the floor. But Margaret was gone. Again. Caroline collapsed against the wall, sobbing. She was here. I swear she was here. Lopez knelt beside her. I believe you. But she's slippery. And dangerous. He looked her in the eye. "We're going to put you somewhere safe tonight. Somewhere she can't get to you." Caroline nodded weakly, relief flooding through her at the thought of leaving that apartment behind. The police arranged for Caroline to stay at a safe house, just a small, secured apartment used for witnesses and victims. It wasn't comfortable, but it was guarded. Cameras on every corner. Officers checking in at all hours. For the first time in weeks, Caroline thought she might finally rest. But Margaret wasn't finished. 2 nights later, Caroline woke in the safe house to the faint sound of a ringtone. Not hers. The landline in the corner. She stumbled to it, heart already pounding. She lifted the receiver. "You can move buildings, change locks, hide behind cops," Margaret's voice whispered. "But you can't erase me. Lesson 3 is the last one. And it's the one you won't survive." The line clicked dead. Caroline dropped the phone, her chest heaving. She called for the officer outside, told him what happened. He rushed in, checked the line, shook his head. "This phone doesn't even have outgoing service. Only incoming. And no one should have this number." Caroline's blood ran cold. The next day, Lopez himself came to see her. "We've got an arrest warrant out for Dawson. We're going to catch her. But until then, you need to be prepared." "Prepared for what?" Caroline whispered. He looked at her grimly. "For her to come back." And come back she did. That night, as the officers made their rounds outside, Caroline heard the sound she dreaded most. A faint, deliberate knock on her window. Tap, tap, tap. She froze in bed, her whole body tense. Slowly, she turned her head. Through the glass, Margaret's face smiled back at her. Pale, gaunt, eyes wide with madness. She mouthed the words, "Lesson 3." Caroline screamed, leaping from the bed. Officers burst in within seconds, but by the time they reached the window, Margaret had vanished into the night. The hunt for her spread across the entire city. Patrol cars combed neighborhoods. Neighbors called in sightings. But Margaret was always one step ahead, always slipping away. For Caroline, every shadow became her enemy. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights. She lived in constant terror, waiting for the final lesson. It came 2 weeks later. Caroline returned to her apartment under police escort, believing it was finally safe. Margaret hadn't been seen in days. Maybe she was gone for good. But when Caroline opened her door, the smell hit her first, something sweet and rotten. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning. On her kitchen table sat a pot roast. Perfectly cooked, steaming, with plates and silverware set for 2. And next to it, a handwritten note. "Dinner's ready. Dessert's waiting." Caroline's scream echoed through the halls as officers rushed in behind her. But Margaret was nowhere to be found. They never caught her. Some neighbors swore they saw her car parked down the street weeks later. Others claimed they heard her laughter echoing in the courtyard at night. But Margaret Dawson simply vanished, slipping into the cracks of the city. Caroline moved away not long after, leaving Orange Blossom condominiums behind forever. But even in her new home, hundreds of miles away, she still wakes at night sometimes to the sound of a knock at her window. Tap, tap, tap. And when she looks, she swears she still sees that smile, mouthing the same words over and over. Lesson 3 never ends.